Bride gossiped and forgot to go to the wedding. The groom's reaction. Michael Johnson adjusted his navy blue tie for the 10th time while glancing at the clock. His bride, Jessica Thompson, should have arrived at St. Francis Church 45 minutes ago. The murmurs of the guests echoed through the church's centuries-old walls, and he felt cold sweat trickling down his forehead. That's when his best man and childhood friend gently touched his shoulder. "Michael, maybe she's just a little late because of traffic," said Brian, trying to sound convincing. 45 minutes, Brian." 45 minutes, Michael replied, his voice trembling slightly. "You know Jessica, she's never late for anything important." What Michael didn't know was that at that very moment, just 3 blocks away, Jessica was at Mrs. Margaret's Pure Beauty salon, completely absorbed in a conversation that had started as a simple greeting to her cousin Jennifer. "Jessica, you won't believe what I saw yesterday," Jennifer had said, bursting into the salon like a whirlwind of gossip. "I saw Brian leaving eternal sparkle jewelry with a blonde woman who definitely wasn't Amanda." The makeup artist, Lindsay, froze mid-brushstroke when she saw Jessica's face change. What should have been the final touches of her makeup turned into a full-blown investigation. "Are you sure it was him?" Jessica asked, her heart racing. Brian had been married to Amanda for 5 years, and she was supposed to be one of the bridesmaids. Absolutely. In fact, they looked really close. She was holding his arm, Jennifer continued, oblivious to the impact of her words. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. Jessica felt the world spin. How could she walk into the church knowing this? How could she let Amanda keep being humiliated without knowing? Her mind raced in 1,000 directions, and the clock on the salon wall seemed to have stopped. "I need to call Amanda," Jessica murmured, digging through her purse for her phone. "Calm down, sweetheart," intervened Mrs. Margaret, a 62-year-old woman who had run the salon for 3 decades. "Maybe you should be sure before doing anything." Mrs. Margaret had seen many weddings over the years. She'd styled brides who married happily, others who discovered betrayals the night before, and some who simply ran from the altar. Her experience told her this situation needed careful handling. "But I can't leave her at the church clueless," Jessica insisted, her eyes welling up, smudging the makeup Lindsay had worked so hard on. Just then, the bridesmaid Patricia, Jessica's younger sister, rushed into the salon looking for the bride. "Jessica, what are you still doing here? Michael is going crazy," Patricia exclaimed, checking her watch. "It's been 40 minutes past the time." "Patricia, sit down. You need to hear this," Jessica said, pulling her sister close. When Jennifer repeated the story to Patricia, things got even more complicated. Patricia had known Brian since he and Michael were teenagers, and this made no sense to her. "Hold on," Patricia said, thoughtful. "Are you sure it was a blonde woman?" "Brian's sister is blonde, and she just arrived from Chicago this week for the wedding." "Sister?" Jennifer asked, less confident now. "I didn't know he had a sister." "Yes, Rebecca. She's younger and looks very youthful," Patricia explained. "Maybe you're all worrying for nothing." But Jessica's mind was already elsewhere. If Brian wasn't cheating on Amanda, then why was he really at the jewelry store? And why was she worrying so much about this when she should be on her way to the church? The answer struck her like lightning. She was afraid. Afraid to get married, afraid to change her life, afraid to stop being the single Jessica everyone knew. The gossip was just an excuse to delay the inevitable. "Jessica, sweetheart, what's going on?" asked Mrs. Margaret, watching the bride's expression with knowing eyes. I don't know, Mrs. Margaret. Suddenly everything feels so complicated," admitted Jessica, finally being honest with herself. Mrs. Margaret stepped closer and held her hands with motherly tenderness. "You know, dear, I've seen many brides come through here, and I can tell you one thing. Fear is normal. But running away doesn't solve anything," the older woman said, her voice filled with wisdom. "When I married my Anthony 40 years ago, I was scared too. Scared I wouldn't be a good enough wife. Scared I'd disappoint him." "And how did you get past it?" Jessica asked, genuinely curious. "By talking, to him, to myself, to God, but mostly by having the courage to face what I was feeling, Mrs. Margaret replied. Because if you don't face it today, you'll carry it with you forever. Meanwhile, at the church, Michael Johnson paced back and forth in front of the altar. Father Anthony, a patient 70-year-old man who had officiated hundreds of weddings, approached him. "My son, maybe we should call to make sure everything's all right," the priest suggested, concerned. "I've tried 5 times. Her phone is either out of range or turned off," Michael replied, running a hand through his hair. "Father, do you think she changed her mind?" Father Anthony had known Michael since he was a boy. He'd given him his first communion, watched him grow up in the parish, and knew the young man had a good heart. "Michael, in over 50 years of officiating weddings, I've learned that true love always finds its way," the priest said, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. "If the two of you truly love each other, you'll work this out. But what if she doesn't come? What if she decided she doesn't want to marry me?" Michael's voice was heavy with vulnerability. "Then you'll have your answer, and as painful as it may be, it'll be better than living a lie," Father Anthony replied honestly. Back at the salon, the situation was getting even more complicated. Catherine, Jessica's mother, had arrived, a strong-willed 58-year-old woman who had worked hard her whole life to give her daughters a good education. "Jessica Thompson, what is this nonsense?" Catherine asked, storming into the salon like a whirlwind. "There's a man at the church crying over you, and you're here chatting." "Mom, it's more complicated than it seems," Jessica tried to explain. "Complicated?" Catherine looked at her daughter with a mix of confusion and frustration. "Sweetheart, I worked 2 jobs for 5 years to pay for this wedding. Your father is at the church, wearing a borrowed suit, proud of his daughter. And you're here wasting time with gossip?" Her mother's words hit Jessica like a punch to the gut. She had never considered the sacrifices her parents had made. Her father, Mr. Joseph, had taken out loans to help with expenses. Her mother had saved every penny for years. "Mom, I know, but—" Jessica began. "No buts, Jessica. Do you love Michael or don't you?" Catherine cut straight to the point. The question echoed through the salon, and all the women present fell silent. That was it. That was exactly it. All this confusion, all this worry about other people's lives was just a way to avoid the most important question. Did she love Michael enough to spend the rest of her life with him? "I do," Jessica whispered, tears finally streaming down her face. "Then stop making problems where there aren't any, and get to that church right now," Catherine said, though her voice had softened. "Sweetheart, fear is normal. When I married your father, I was scared too. But love is stronger than fear." Lindsay, who had been hired specifically to make Jessica perfect on her wedding day, looked at the smudged makeup with professional resignation. "We'll have to redo everything," she said, already picking up the brushes again. "No," said Jessica, standing up from the chair. "There's no time. I'll go like this." "Jessica, you can't go to the church with your makeup all smudged," protested Patricia. "Yes, I can. Michael loves me for who I am. And if he truly loves me, he won't care about smudged makeup," Jessica replied, a new determination in her voice. Mrs. Margaret smiled. In 40 years of working, she had learned to recognize the exact moment when a bride truly understood what it meant to get married. "Now you're talking like a woman who knows what she wants," Mrs. Margaret said proudly. But as Jessica headed for the door, Jennifer grabbed her arm. "Jessica, wait. What about the whole thing with Brian? Aren't you going to do anything?" asked her cousin. "Jennifer, you know what I learned today," Jessica said, turning to face her. "I learned that everyone has to mind their own business. If Brian is cheating on Amanda, she'll find out when the time is right. But today is my day. It's about my love. It's about my life." The response left Jennifer speechless. She had spent so much time worrying about other people's lives that she had forgotten to live her own. Jessica rushed out of the salon, holding up her dress to avoid tripping. Catherine and Patricia ran after her, while Mrs. Margaret stood at the door, waving and hoping everything would work out. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. The taxi Catherine had called was waiting outside. During the 3-block ride to the church, Jessica tried to gather her thoughts. How would she explain this to Michael? How could she apologize for being almost an hour late? How could she make him understand she'd had a moment of panic? "Sweetheart, breathe," Catherine said, holding her hand. "Everything will be fine." "Mum, what if he doesn't forgive me? What if he thought I changed my mind?" Jessica's voice trembled. "Jessica, if Michael truly loves you, he'll understand. And if he doesn't, maybe he's not the right man for you," Catherine replied, with the wisdom of someone who had lived a long life. When they arrived at the church, Jessica saw through the taxi window that cars were still parked outside. That meant the guests were still there, that Michael was still waiting. Her heart raced between relief and nervousness. "I'll go in first to see how things are," Patricia said, stepping out of the taxi. Jessica waited in the car with her mother, staring at the facade of St. Francis Church, where she had dreamed of getting married since she was a little girl. It was where her parents had married, where she'd had her first communion, where she had cried and prayed through so many hard times in her life. Patricia came running back, her face pale. "Jessica, Michael he's really shaken. I think he really believed you weren't coming," Patricia said hesitantly. "What do you mean, shaken?" Jessica asked, stepping out of the taxi. "He's sitting in the front pew with his head in his hands. Brian said he cried," Patricia explained quietly. Jessica's world crumbled. She had made the man she loved cry on what should have been the happiest day of their lives. All that gossip now seemed ridiculous compared to the real pain she had caused. "I need to talk to him," Jessica said, walking determinedly toward the church. "Wait, Jessica," Catherine stopped her. "Maybe you should think about what you're going to say first." "Mom, I already have. I'll tell the truth, that I was afraid, that I ran away, that I was a coward, and I'll ask for forgiveness," answered Jessica, her eyes still red but determined. When Jessica pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the church, the silence that followed was deafening. All the guests turned to look at her, and she could feel the weight of every gaze. Some showed relief, others curiosity, many judgment. Michael was exactly where Patricia had said, sitting in the first pew, his back to the entrance. He didn't turn when he heard the murmurs. He seemed to have given up waiting. Jessica began walking down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the absolute silence of the church. Each step felt like an eternity. When she got close enough, she called softly, "Michael." He turned slowly, and what Jessica saw took her breath away. His eyes were red, his face marked by the suffering of nearly an hour of uncertainty and pain. "Jessica," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe she was really there. "Michael, I need to explain," Jessica began, her voice trembling. Michael stood, walking toward her. For a moment they stood there, frozen in the middle of the church, staring at each other. All the love they felt for one another was there, but so was all the pain of that morning. "Jessica, I thought you'd changed your mind," Michael said, his voice barely audible. "No, I didn't. I was afraid, Michael. So afraid," Jessica admitted, tears now flowing freely. "Afraid to get married, afraid of change, afraid I wouldn't be a good enough wife for you." "But why didn't you tell me? Why did you run?" The hurt in his voice was clear. "Because I'm a coward. Because I thought it'd be easier to make up excuses than face my own fears," Jessica answered, brutally honest. Father Anthony approached the two. "My children, perhaps it's best we speak privately," he suggested, glancing at the guests watching their every move. "No, Father," Jessica said, turning to the guests. "I want everyone to hear. I want them all to know Michael did nothing wrong, that he's a wonderful man who had the misfortune of falling in love with a coward." "Jessica, don't talk about yourself like that," Michael pleaded, stepping closer. "It's the truth, Michael. You deserved a bride who'd show up on time, who wouldn't make you suffer, who was sure of her feelings," Jessica continued, looking into his eyes. "But I promise you this, if you give me a second chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making up for those 45 minutes of pain I caused you." Michael stayed silent for what felt like forever. The guests held their breath, waiting for his answer. "Jessica, when we first met, you were late to our first date," Michael said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "That's true," she admitted, confused where he was going. "And I waited. I waited because I knew you were worth it. I waited because I loved you," Michael continued. "Today was no different. I waited because I love you, and I'll keep waiting as long as it takes." "Does that mean you forgive me?" Jessica asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means I love you. With your fears, your flaws, your lateness," Michael answered, finally smiling. "And it means I want to marry you today, right now, if you still want to." "I do," Jessica said without hesitation. "I really do." The relief that swept through the church was almost tangible. The guests began to applaud, and Jessica finally let herself smile. She'd nearly lost the love of her life because of fear, but she'd learned something priceless. Facing fears was better than running from them. Father Anthony, moved by what he'd witnessed, took his place at the altar. "Well, then let's begin this ceremony," he said with a smile. Jessica looked at Michael, who extended his arm to her. "Ready?" he asked. "Now I am," she replied, taking his arm. They walked together to the altar, and Jessica felt she was exactly where she belonged. It didn't matter that her makeup was smudged, that her hair was a little messy, or that the entire church had witnessed her moment of weakness. What mattered was that she had chosen love over fear. During the ceremony, as they exchanged vows, Jessica glanced at the crowd and saw Mrs. Margaret at the back of the church. The elderly woman had closed her salon to attend the wedding and was smiling proudly. She also spotted Jennifer, who seemed to be reflecting on her own life choices. When Father Anthony asked Michael to kiss the bride, the kiss carried all the emotions of that morning: fear, pain, forgiveness, but above all, the unconditional love they felt for each other. As they left the church, guests threw rice and rose petals. Catherine wept with emotion, hugging her son-in-law tenderly. Mr. Joseph, a man of few words, simply shook Michael's hand and said, "Thank you for waiting for my daughter." "I would have waited a lifetime," Michael replied sincerely. The reception at the parish hall was more beautiful than Jessica had imagined, not just because of the decorations or the food, but because of the overwhelming sense of gratitude in the air. Everyone there knew they had witnessed something special, a love that had been tested and had triumphed. During the newlyweds dance, Michael whispered in Jessica's ear, "You know, I was thinking, maybe we should start a tradition." "What kind of tradition?" she asked curiously. "Every time one of us is scared or wants to run from something, we stop everything and talk. No running, no excuses," Michael suggested. "I love that idea," Jessica replied, kissing his cheek. "And I promise I'll never make you wait again." "I hope not, but if it happens, I'll still be there," Michael said, spinning her on the dance floor. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. A few months after the wedding, Jessica and Michael were at home preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. It was Jennifer, the cousin who had started the whole mess with the story about Brian. "Hi, Jessica. Can we talk?" Jennifer asked, looking embarrassed. "Of course, come in," Jessica replied, curious. Michael greeted Jennifer and discreetly stepped outside, sensing the two needed to talk privately. "Jessica, I came to apologize," Jennifer said, sitting on the couch. "That whole thing with Brian, I found out it really was his sister at the jewelry store." "I figured as much," Jessica answered, pouring coffee. "But you don't need to apologize, Jennifer. In the end, it helped me realize some things about myself." "But I almost ruined your wedding with a stupid rumor," Jennifer insisted, visibly remorseful. "You didn't almost ruin anything. I'm the one who almost ruined it by using your story as an excuse to run from my own fears," Jessica corrected. "Actually, I should thank you." "Thank me?" Jennifer looked confused. "Yes, because if it hadn't been for that day, I might never have learned to face my fears. I might have spent the rest of my life running from hard situations," Jessica explained. "That day taught me it's better to face the truth no matter how scary it is." Jennifer fell silent for a moment, absorbing her cousin's words. "You know, Jessica, I think I learned a lesson that day too," Jennifer finally said. "I've learned that maybe I worry so much about other people's lives because I'm afraid to look at my own." "What do you mean?" asked Jessica, interested. "Well, I'm 32. I live alone. I haven't been in a serious relationship for years. Maybe it's easier to comment on other people's lives than to face the fact that I'm scared to really get involved with someone, admitted Jennifer. And why are you afraid? Asked Jessica gently. Because I saw my parents go through such a painful separation when I was a teenager. Because I've seen so many people suffer for love. I think unconsciously I decided it was safer to watch other people's lives than to live my own, explained Jennifer, her eyes beginning to well up. Jessica stood up and hugged her cousin. Jennifer, it's not too late to change. If I could face my fears, so can you, said Jessica affectionately. But how? How do I stop being afraid? Asked Jennifer. Start slow, maybe by agreeing to go out with that guy from accounting at your company, who you said is interested in you, suggested Jessica, smiling. Mark. Jennifer blushed. How did you know? Because you told me yourself, remember? Except instead of focusing on him, you started bad-mouthing his ex-girlfriend, Jessica reminded her. Jennifer laughed, realizing how obvious her behavior pattern was. You're right. Maybe it's time I stop running away, said Jennifer, sounding more determined. And I'll be here to support you, just like you were there for me, even if in a kinda confusing way, Jessica teased. They both laughed, and Jessica realized how important this conversation was for both of them. They were getting to know each other on a deeper level, beyond the superficial talks they'd always had. Jessica, can I ask you something? Said Jennifer hesitantly. Of course. How did you know Michael was the right man? How were you sure it was worth facing your fear? Asked Jennifer. Jessica thought for a moment before answering. You know, Jennifer, I don't think we're ever completely sure about anything in life. But there are moments when you feel it's worth the risk, Jessica began. With Michael, I always knew he accepted me just as I am. On my bad days, my good days, even on my panicky days like that one at the wedding. And how did you realize that? Jennifer pressed. In the little things. The way he looked at me when I told him some silly thing I'd done at work. The way he held my hand when I was nervous. The fact that he always listened, even when I was complaining about something trivial, Jessica explained. True love isn't just passion, Jennifer. It's companionship, partnership, having someone who roots for you even when you're not rooting for yourself. Do you think I can find that? Asked Jennifer, vulnerable. I'm sure you can. But first, you need to give yourself a chance. You need to stop looking for flaws in others and start seeing their qualities, Jessica replied. And you need to stop being afraid of being happy. Michael came back from the backyard just then, carrying some oranges from the tree. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you might like some fresh juice, he said, smiling. Michael, can I ask you something? Said Jennifer impulsively. Of course, he replied, starting to peel the oranges. Were you ever afraid of getting married? Did you ever think about running away? Asked Jennifer. Michael stopped what he was doing and looked at Jessica, who nodded encouragingly for him to be honest. I was, Jennifer. The night before the wedding, I couldn't even sleep properly, Michael admitted. But you know what made the difference? What? Asked Jessica and Jennifer in unison. I talked to my father about it. He told me something I'll never forget. Son, fear is normal. What's not normal is letting fear decide your life for you, Michael said, and he was right. I was scared, but my love for Jessica was stronger than fear. And what if she hadn't shown up at the church? Jennifer asked curiously. I would have gone after her, Michael replied without hesitation, because deep in my heart, I knew she loved me. And if someone you love is running away, it's your duty to show them they don't have to. Jessica was moved by her husband's words. Even after months of marriage, she was still amazed by the depth of his love. Michael, you're a special man, Jennifer said sincerely. I hope to find someone like that one day. You will, Jennifer, but remember what Jessica told you. You have to give yourself a chance, Michael replied, going back to making juice. Jennifer stayed for dinner, and they talked about many things. For the first time in years, she spoke about her own dreams, her own fears, her own plans. Not about other people's lives, but her own. When she was leaving, she hugged them both. Thank you for today. I think I really needed this talk, Jennifer said. I'm glad it helped, Jessica replied. And remember, Monday, You're talking to Mark. I will, Jennifer promised, smiling. Even if I'm nervous to death. The nerves will pass. The regret of not trying lasts forever, Michael said wisely. After Jennifer left, Jessica and Michael stayed cuddled on the couch, reflecting on the conversation. Do you think she'll really talk to Mark? Jessica asked. I think so. I think she just needed a little push, Michael replied. Just like you needed that little push on our wedding day. What push? Jessica asked curiously. From your mom. If she hadn't shown up at the salon, do you think you'd have found the courage to come to the church? Michael asked. Jessica thought for a moment. Maybe. Maybe not. But it definitely would have taken much longer, she admitted. Sometimes we really need someone to show us the obvious, huh? True. And sometimes we almost have to lose something to truly appreciate it, Michael said, kissing her forehead. A few weeks later, Jennifer called Jessica, ecstatic. Jessica, you won't believe it, she shouted over the phone. What happened? Jessica asked, laughing at her cousin's excitement. I talked to Mark, and he asked me to dinner, Jennifer said, clearly overjoyed. Jennifer, that's wonderful. Tell me everything, Jessica said, sitting down to listen. Well, on Monday I went to work determined to talk to him, but when I saw him in the hallway I got so nervous I almost backed out, Jennifer began. Then I remembered what you and Michael said and I thought, if Jessica could face her fear, so can I. And then, Jessica encouraged. Then I took a deep breath and went up to him. I asked if he wanted to have lunch with me, Jennifer continued. And you know what he said? What? He said he'd been wanting to ask me out for months but was afraid I'd say no. Jennifer laughed. Can you believe it? Both of us scared of the same thing. That's so sweet, Jessica said, genuinely happy for her cousin. How was lunch? Amazing, Jessica. We talked about everything, and I realized he's way more interesting than I thought, Jennifer said. And the best part? He told me he always thought I was too busy with other people's lives to care about him. Wow, he even knew you that well, Jessica teased. Right? But you know what really surprised me? Jennifer said. What? He said he always admired how much I cared about others. He just thought maybe I should care about myself a little more too, Jennifer explained. It wasn't judgmental, you know. It was a tender observation. Jennifer, this young man seems very special, said Jessica. He is, and I'm excited to get to know him better. But this time, no rushing, no desperation. Just letting things flow, said Jennifer, and Jessica could hear the newfound maturity in her cousin's voice. I'm so proud of you, Jennifer. Truly, said Jessica, moved. Thank you, Jessica, for everything. You and Michael helped me so much that day, Jennifer replied. After hanging up, Jessica told Michael everything, and he smiled proudly. Look at that, our first successful marriage counseling, he joked. It's not quite marriage counseling yet. They've only just started getting to know each other, Jessica corrected, laughing. But the principle is the same, facing fears instead of running from them, said Michael. I think we learned something valuable that chaotic day in our own marriage. That's true, and you know what? I wouldn't change a thing about that day, said Jessica, surprising herself. Not even the fact you left me waiting for almost an hour, Michael teased. Not even that, because that was the day I truly learned what it means to love someone. It's not just wanting to be with them when everything is perfect. It's choosing to be with them even when you're scared, even when you mess up, even when you're not at your best, Jessica explained. And forgiving when the person you love makes mistakes, Michael added. Exactly, and not giving up, even when things get hard, said Jessica, kissing her husband. Several months passed, and Jessica and Michael settled into a happy routine. They had kept their promise to always talk when one of them was scared or worried about something. The rule was simple: no running away, no making excuses. Problems on the table, honest conversation. One day, Jessica came home from work visibly upset. Michael was in the kitchen making dinner when she walked in. Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her expression. Michael, I need to talk to you about something, Jessica said seriously. Michael turned off the stove and faced her, giving her his full attention. Go ahead, love. What's wrong? He asked, concerned. Today, my boss offered me a promotion. Jessica began. Jessica, that's wonderful. Why do you look so worried? Michael asked, confused. Because the promotion is to manage the Chicago branch. I'd have to move, Jessica explained, watching his reaction. Michael was silent for a moment, processing the news. And do you want to take it? He asked calmly. I don't know, Michael. It's an incredible professional opportunity, but it would mean leaving our families, our friends, Jessica said anxiously. And I'm afraid you won't want to go. Jessica, sit down, Michael said, gesturing to the chair beside him. Let's talk this through properly. They sat at the kitchen table, and Michael took her hands. First, tell me one thing. Setting aside all the fears, all the buts, do you want this promotion? He asked. I do, Jessica admitted without hesitation. I've always dreamed of a leadership role at the company. Then we'll find a way to make it work, Michael said, smiling. But what about your job, your business? Jessica asked worriedly. Jessica, I'm an accountant. I can work from anywhere, especially nowadays with technology, Michael explained. And if needed, I can find another job in Chicago. You'd do that for me? Jessica asked, touched. Jessica, when I married you, I married your dreams too. If your dream is to grow professionally, my dream is to help you achieve it, Michael replied sincerely. But what if it doesn't work out? What if we regret it? Jessica's insecurities surfaced. What if it does? What if it's the best decision we've ever made? Michael countered. Jessica, remember our talk about facing our fears? I do, she whispered. Then let's apply it here. We have to make this decision based on what we want for our future, not our fears, Michael said. You're right, Jessica agreed, but I need to ask you something. Aren't you scared at all about this change? I am, Michael admitted. I'm scared I won't find a job there quickly. I'm scared we'll miss our family. I'm scared you'll regret it and think I pressured you, he confessed. And you'd still go through with it? Jessica asked. I would, because the fear of not trying is greater than the fear of trying and failing, Michael replied. And because I trust in our love, in our ability to face challenges together. Jessica stood up and hugged her husband, moved. I love you so much, Michael. So much it sometimes scares me, she said. And I love you too. That's exactly why we'll make this work, he answered, returning the embrace. So you think I should accept? Jessica asked. I think we should accept. Together, Michael corrected. They spent the rest of the evening discussing the practical details of the move, when they'd go, how the transition would work, which furniture they'd take, how they'd stay in touch with family. With each settled detail, their anxiety faded and excitement grew. You know what? Jessica said at bedtime. I think this is the first big decision we've truly made together as a couple. How so? Michael asked. In our marriage, we each made decisions mostly alone. I decided to run away. You decided to wait. But this time, we're deciding together from the start, Jessica explained. That's true, and you know what that means, Michael said. What? That we're growing as people and as a couple, he replied, kissing her forehead. The next morning, Jessica called her boss and accepted the promotion. The move would happen in 2 months, enough time to organize everything. The first person they told was Catherine, Jessica's mother. Chicago? Catherine said, clearly worried. But honey, it's so far. Mom, it's a 3-hour bus ride. We'll visit every month, Jessica reassured her. And where will you live? You don't know anyone there. Maternal concerns began pouring out. Mom, the company will help with temporary housing, and we'll meet new people, make new friends, Jessica explained. But what if you don't adjust? What if you're unhappy away from family? Catherine pressed. Michael noticed Jessica growing anxious under her mother's worries. Mrs. Catherine, may I say something? He interjected respectfully. Of course, dear, Catherine replied. I raised a strong, smart daughter. Someone who faces challenges and doesn't give up easily, Michael said. If she could overcome her fear of marriage, she can overcome her fear of moving. It's true, Mom. And besides, I won't be alone. I'll have Michael, Jessica added, holding her husband's hand. Catherine looked at them and smiled. You're right. Sorry. Sometimes a mother worries too much, she said. I'm proud of you both. I'll miss you, but I know you'll do well. The conversation with Mr. Joseph was simpler. He just said, "If this is what you want, you have my blessing, and if you need anything, just call." Michael's family was also saddened by the news, but supported the couple's decision. The following weeks were intense. They had 1,000 details to handle, selling some furniture, packing the rest, transferring documents, cancelling services. But with each task completed, they felt more united and more confident in their choice. A week before the move, Jennifer showed up at their house with some news. "Guys, I have something to tell you," she said, visibly excited. "Tell us," said Jessica, curious. "Mark asked me to be his girlfriend," announced Jennifer, flashing a radiant smile. "Jennifer, that's wonderful," Jessica exclaimed, hugging her cousin. "Congratulations, Jennifer. You two make a beautiful couple," said Michael, sincere. "Thank you. And you know what? I wouldn't have had the courage to go for this if it weren't for the two of you," Jennifer said, emotional. "Nonsense, Jennifer. The courage was always inside you. We just helped you find it," Jessica replied. "It's true. And now look at this. You're off to Chicago for a new adventure, and I'm dating," Jennifer continued. "Who would have thought that chaotic day at your wedding would lead to so much good?" "Life is funny like that," Michael agreed. "Sometimes the things that seem like disasters at the time turn into the best things that ever happened to us. Speaking of which, Jennifer, you and Mark will be responsible for looking after Margaret while we're away," Jessica said, smiling. "What do you mean?" Jennifer asked. "We arranged with her that you'll visit her at least once a month. She loved the idea of having adopted kids," Jessica explained. "How sweet. Of course we'll take care of her," Jennifer promised. Margaret had become a very important figure in Jessica and Michael's lives. They visited her regularly, and she always had wise advice to share. Leaving her was one of the hardest parts of the move. The night before their trip, they went to say goodbye to her at the salon. "My dears, I'm so proud of you," Margaret said, hugging them both. "You've come so far since that day." "You were a big part of that, Margaret," Jessica said. "Your words that day helped me find courage." "Nonsense, dear. I just said what anyone with a little experience would say," Margaret replied modestly. "It's not nonsense. You saved our marriage," Michael insisted. "You saved your own marriage. I just gave you a little nudge," Margaret said, smiling. "And now you're off on a new adventure. How wonderful." "You don't think we're being reckless, do you?" Jessica asked, a last flicker of doubt in her voice. "Jessica, at my age, I've seen plenty of people regret things they did, but far more regret things they didn't do," Margaret said wisely. "You're young, you love each other, and you're healthy. If not now, when?" "You're right," Jessica agreed. "And remember, Chicago isn't another planet. If it doesn't work out, you can always come back. But I'm sure you'll do just fine," Margaret said confidently. On moving day, the whole family came to say goodbye at the bus station. There were tears, but also a lot of joy and pride. "Take good care of my son-in-law out there," Catherine teased, hugging Jessica. "And you take good care of my daughter," Mr. Joseph said to Michael. "I promise," Michael replied, emotional. Jennifer and Mark were there too, along with Margaret, who had closed the salon just to see them off. "You'll keep in touch, right?" Patricia asked, visibly sad. "Of course, and you're always welcome to visit," Jessica said. "I'm already planning the first trip," Catherine said, trying to hide her emotions. When it was finally time to board, Jessica looked at all those dear faces and felt grateful. Grateful for a family that supported her, friends who cheered her on, and most of all, for having by her side a man who had chosen to build a life with her. "Ready?" Michael asked, holding out his hand. "Ready," Jessica answered without hesitation. On the bus, as the city where they had been born and raised faded into the distance, they talked about the future. "Michael, do you have any regrets?" asked Jessica. "None. And you?" he replied. "Me neither. I'm excited, anxious, a little nervous, but not regretful," Jessica said. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because this time I'm not running away. I'm moving towards something, not running from something," Jessica explained. "And that makes all the difference." "It really does," Michael agreed. "And you know the best part." "What?" "No matter what happens, we'll face it together," Michael said, kissing her hand. Chicago welcomed them with rain, traffic, and hurry, but also with endless possibilities. The apartment the company had arranged for them was small but cozy, in a lively, bustling neighborhood. "It's not like our home," Jessica said, looking around. "Not yet," Michael corrected, "but it will be once we make it ours." The first few months were challenging. Jessica adjusted quickly to her new job, but missed her family and friends. Michael took longer to find work, which caused some tension between them. One evening, after a particularly hard day when Michael had received yet another rejection from an interview, they had their first serious argument since the move. "Michael, maybe you should consider taking that job they offered, even if the pay is lower," Jessica suggested wearily. "Jessica, we talked about this. That job wouldn't let me grow professionally," Michael replied, frustrated. "But at least it would be income, some stability," Jessica insisted. "Do you regret us coming here?" Michael asked, getting straight to the point. "No, that's not it," Jessica hesitated. "Then what is it?" Michael pressed. "It's just, I feel guilty, like you left everything behind for me, and now you're struggling to get settled," Jessica admitted finally. Michael moved closer and cupped her face in his hands. "Jessica, look at me," he said gently. "I didn't leave anything behind for you. I chose to build a new future with you. It's different. But you're unemployed, far from your family," Jessica began. "And you're thriving at work, meeting new people, living the experience you always dreamed of," Michael interrupted. "Jessica, relationships go through phases. Sometimes you carry me, sometimes I carry you. Right now it's your turn to carry me." "What do you mean?" Jessica asked. "You're doing well at your job, earning good money, stable." "That gives me the freedom to look for the right job, not just any job," Michael explained. "If it were the other way around, if I'd gotten a job first and you were still looking, I'd give you the same freedom." "Are you sure?" Jessica asked, still uncertain. "I am. And you know how I know everything will work out?" Michael said. "How?" "Because we both learned to face our fears instead of running from them. And we learned to trust each other. With that, we can get through anything," Michael replied, kissing her forehead. 2 weeks later, Michael landed an excellent job at a consulting firm. The pay was better than what he'd earned back home, and the growth prospects were promising. "Jessica, I got it," he shouted, bursting into the house, euphoric. "Really? Tell me everything," Jessica said, dropping whatever she was doing. Michael recounted the interview, the people he'd met, the projects he'd be working on. His joy was contagious. "I'm so proud of you," Jessica said, hugging her husband, "and thank you for not giving up." "Thank you for giving me the time I needed," Michael replied. That evening, they celebrated at a small neighborhood restaurant. During dinner, Jessica looked around and realized something. She felt at home. Chicago was no longer a strange city. It was the place where she and Michael were building a new life. "Michael, I think I finally feel like a Chicagoan," she said, smiling. "Me too." "And you know what I find funniest?" Michael replied. "What? At first I thought we were starting from scratch here, but really we brought everything that matters. Our love, our trust, our ability to face challenges together," Michael reflected. "That's true. We didn't start from zero. We just continued our story in a new place," Jessica agreed. 6 months after the move, they received a very special visit. Catherine, Mr. Joseph, Jennifer, Mark, and to their surprise, Mrs. Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, what a wonderful surprise," Jessica exclaimed, running to hug the older woman. "I couldn't miss seeing where you're living," Mrs. Margaret said, beaming, "and I brought reinforcements to help me with the trip." "How's everything here?" Catherine asked, looking around the now decorated and cozy apartment. "Wonderful, Mom. Different, but wonderful," Jessica replied. Over the weekend, they showed their family around the city. They took everyone to see the sights, the restaurants they'd discovered, and their neighborhood. "So you two seem different," Jennifer observed during a walk in the park. "How so?" Jessica asked. "More confident, more mature. Like you've grown," Jennifer explained. "I think we really have," Michael agreed. "We've learned to rely on each other more, to face new situations together." "And how about you two?" Jessica asked Jennifer and Mark. "Great," Mark replied, holding Jennifer's hand. "In fact, We have some news." "What news?" Jessica and Michael asked in unison. "We're getting married," Jennifer announced, showing off a ring on her finger. "Jennifer," Jessica cried, hugging her cousin. "How wonderful!" "Congratulations, you two," Michael said, shaking Mark's hand. "And guess who's doing my hair for the wedding?" Jennifer said, grinning. "Mrs. Margaret," Jessica guessed. "Exactly. She said she wouldn't let anyone else touch her honorary granddaughter's hair," Jennifer laughed. "And you'll come back for the wedding, right?" Mark asked hopefully. "Of course. We wouldn't miss it for anything," Jessica promised. Mrs. Margaret, who had been listening, stepped closer. "You know I'm so proud of all of you, don't you?" she said, emotional. "Why, Mrs. Margaret?" Michael asked. "Because you've learned to truly live." Jessica and Michael had the courage to start a new life. Jennifer had the courage to open her heart to love. And all of you have learned that fear can't rule your lives, the older woman explained. "You were so important in that process," Jessica said. "I just planted a little seed. You're the ones who made it grow," Mrs. Margaret replied, as modest as ever. When it was time to say goodbye on Sunday night, everyone was emotional. "Your home here is beautiful, but you'll always have a home back there too," Catherine said, hugging them both. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for raising me strong, for supporting our decisions, for always being here," Jessica said, tears in her eyes. "That's a mother's job, sweetheart," Catherine replied, equally moved. Mr. Joseph, a man of few words, simply said, "You're on the right path. Keep going." Mrs. Margaret was the last to say goodbye. "My dears, remember, life is like a dance. Sometimes you'll be in step, sometimes you'll stumble. What matters is never stopping dancing together," she said, embracing them both. After everyone had left, Jessica and Michael stayed on the couch, embracing, reflecting on the weekend. "It was good to see everyone," said Jessica. "It really was, but you know what?" Michael replied. "What?" "I felt at home here with them around. That means we've truly made this place our home," Michael observed. "That's true. And you know what else made me happy?" Jessica said. "What?" "Seeing that we can keep our family ties strong even when we're far away, and that the people we love cheer for our success," Jessica reflected. "And Jennifer, huh? Who would have thought that cousin who only knew how to gossip would find such a beautiful love?" Michael teased. "Right. Sometimes people just need a little push to show who they really are," Jessica said. "Like us on that wedding day," Michael recalled. "Exactly. Sometimes the hardest moments teach us the most," Jessica agreed. A year after the move, Jessica received another promotion, this time to regional director. Michael was also growing professionally and had been promoted to project coordinator. "Michael, do you think we're growing too fast?" Jessica asked one evening. "Why do you say that?" he replied with another question. "Sometimes I worry we're so focused on work that we forget other important things," Jessica explained. "What kind of things?" Michael asked, curious. "I don't know. Starting a family, for example," Jessica said hesitantly. Michael stopped what he was doing and looked at her. "Jessica, do you want to have kids?" he asked directly. "I do. Don't you?" she replied. "I do. I was just waiting for you to feel ready to bring it up," Michael admitted. "And when do you think would be a good time?" Jessica asked. "Whenever you want. We're established professionally, financially stable, living in a city that offers great opportunities for kids," Michael listed. "And most importantly, we're happy and united." "Do you think we'd be good parents?" Jessica asked, vulnerable. "Jessica, look at how we've built a new life together. Look at how we've learned to face challenges, to support each other. If we can do that as a couple, we can do it as a family too," Michael replied confidently. "You're right. And besides, our kids would have the best grandparents in the world," Jessica joked. "And the best honorary godmother, Mrs. Margaret," Michael added, laughing. "And the godparents, Jennifer and Mark," Jessica chimed in. "Our family keeps getting bigger," Michael noted. "And stronger," Jessica finished. 6 months later, they received the best news of their lives. Jessica was pregnant. "Michael, are you sure you're ready for this?" Jessica asked, looking at the positive pregnancy test. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Michael replied, hugging her gently. What if we don't know what to do? What if we make mistakes? Jessica's insecurities surfaced. Jessica, remember our rule? Michael said, smiling. What rule? We face our fears together. We don't run from them, Michael reminded her. And if we make mistakes, we learn and fix them, just like we've done with everything in our lives. You're right. I'm excited, Michael. Really excited, Jessica said, finally smiling. Me too. And I can't wait to tell everyone, Michael said. Should we call our families now? Jessica suggested. Let's. But first, let's call Mrs. Margaret, Michael decided. Why her first? Jessica asked, curious. Because she's the one who taught us that love is about facing fears together. And now we'll need that lesson more than ever, Michael explained. When they called Mrs. Margaret, she cried with joy. My dears, what happiness! You're going to be wonderful parents, she said through tears. Mrs. Margaret, would you like to be an honorary grandma? Jessica asked affectionately. It would be the greatest honor of my life, Mrs. Margaret replied, moved. The family's reactions were pure joy. Catherine screamed so loudly that Mr. Joseph came running, thinking something had happened. Michael's parents were overjoyed. Jennifer and Mark immediately offered to be godparents. You know you'll have to visit us more often now, right? Catherine teased. Of course, Mom. And you'll have to come here more too, Jessica replied. I'm already planning to move to Chicago, Catherine joked. Mom, Jessica laughed. Just kidding, sweetheart. But I will come stay for a few days when the baby's born, Catherine promised. During the pregnancy, Jessica worked until the 7th month. Her company was very understanding and allowed her to switch to part-time toward the end. Michael took on more household responsibilities, preparing the house for the baby's arrival. Michael, do you think we're ready? Jessica asked one night, just days before the delivery. I don't think anyone's ever completely ready to be a parent, Michael answered, gently rubbing her belly. But we have love, determination, and a family that supports us. That's more than many people have. And we have our experience facing challenges together, Jessica added. Exactly. And this will be our greatest and most beautiful challenge, Michael said, kissing her belly. Emma Grace was born on a sunny spring morning. When Michael held his daughter for the first time, he cried, Jessica, look what we made, he whispered, overcome with emotion. She's the most perfect thing I've ever seen, Jessica replied, also in tears. She has your eyes, Michael observed. And your nose, Jessica added. I think she'll be stubborn like her mum, Michael teased. And affectionate like her dad, Jessica finished. 2 weeks after the birth, the whole family came to meet Emma Grace. The house was full, noisy, and overflowing with love. She's so beautiful, Catherine said, carefully cradling her granddaughter. Takes after her grandparents, Mr. Joseph joked proudly. Mrs. Margaret arrived loaded with gifts and stories. When I was young, my grandma used to say, babies bring blessings to the whole family, she said, watching Emma Grace sleep. And looking at you all, I see it's true. What do you mean, Mrs. Margaret? Jessica asked. You've grown so much since you met. You've faced fears, overcome challenges, built a beautiful life together. And now you're starting an even more beautiful chapter, Mrs. Margaret explained. Do you really think we can handle this? Michael asked uncertainly. I'm absolutely sure. You have everything you need. Love, unity, courage, and determination, Mrs. Margaret replied confidently. Jennifer and Mark, who had married a few months earlier, watched the couple with Emma Grace in admiration. One day we want this too, Jennifer told Mark. We will, Mark promised, kissing his wife's forehead. You'll be amazing parents when the time comes, Jessica said, overhearing them. You're our inspiration, Jennifer admitted. Seeing how you faced every challenge and built such a beautiful family gives us hope. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Jessica and Michael stayed up watching Emma Grace. Michael, remember when we talked about whether taking the risk was worth it? Jessica whispered. I remember, he replied softly. Looking at her, I'm sure every decision we made, every fear we faced, every challenge we overcame was worth it, Jessica said, moved. I'm sure too. And you know what else I'm sure of? Michael asked. What? That we're going to teach her everything we've learned. That it's possible to face your fears. That it's possible to build a beautiful life with the person you love. That it's possible to start over as many times as necessary, explained Michael. And that family isn't just about blood. It's about who chooses to stand by you, who roots for your success, who helps you through tough times, added Jessica, thinking of Mrs. Margaret, Jennifer, Mark, and everyone who had become family to them. Exactly. And that true love grows stronger with every challenge you overcome, Michael finished. 2 years later, they decided to return to their hometown. The Chicago branch was running smoothly, and Jessica managed to secure a transfer to oversee the main office. Michael also landed an excellent job in the city. Do you think we're making the right choice? Jessica asked as they packed their things once again. I think we're making the choice that makes sense for our family right now, Michael replied. Emma Grace deserves to grow up near her grandparents, her family, the people who love us. And we deserve to be near those who love us too, Jessica added. Besides, Chicago will always be here if we ever want to come back, Michael reminded her. That's true, and now we know we can start over anywhere, Jessica said confidently. When they arrived back in their hometown, they were welcomed like heroes. Mrs. Margaret threw a party at the salon, the whole family was there, and even some neighbors came to greet them. You two look different, Mrs. Catherine observed, hugging the couple. How so, Mom? Jessica asked. More confident, more mature. You left here as a young couple and came back as a complete family, Catherine explained. That's life experience, right? Michael said, bouncing Emma Grace in his arms. It's more than that, Mrs. Margaret interjected. It's courage. The courage to face the unknown, to grow, to change when you need to. That night, in the house they'd bought in the same neighborhood where they'd grown up, Jessica and Michael put Emma Grace to bed and sat in the backyard to talk. Michael, do you regret anything? Jessica asked. Not a thing, and you? He replied. Me neither. Not even that chaotic day at our wedding, Jessica said, smiling. Why not? Michael asked curiously. Because that was the day we truly learned to face our fears. And that lesson brought us here, Jessica explained. You're right. If you hadn't had that breakdown, maybe we never would have learned to really talk about our feelings, Michael agreed. And if we hadn't learned that, maybe we never would have had the courage to accept the promotion in Chicago, Jessica added. And if we hadn't gone to Chicago, maybe we never would have grown as a couple and as people, Michael finished. It's amazing how everything connects, isn't it? Jessica mused. Yeah, and you know the best part, Michael said. What? Our story is just beginning. We have a daughter to raise, dreams to chase, more challenges to face together, Michael said, taking her hand. And now we know we can handle anything, Jessica said confidently. As long as we're together, Michael finished. They sat there in silence, gazing at the stars and reflecting on how far they'd come. From the chaotic wedding day to their 2 years in Chicago, from Emma Grace's birth to their return home. Every moment had mattered. Every decision had been a brick in building their life together. Michael, what do you think Mrs. Margaret meant when she said our story was just beginning? Jessica asked. I think she meant we've learned how to truly live, and now we can teach this to our daughter and anyone else who needs it, replied Michael. Like Jennifer back then? Asked Jessica. Exactly. We went from people who needed help to people who can help others, Michael observed. What a responsibility, said Jessica, smiling. What a privilege, Michael corrected. 3 years after their return, they were organizing a party to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. The guest list included their entire family, old and new friends, Mrs. Margaret, Jennifer, and Mark, who now also had a child, and even some colleagues from Chicago who had become dear friends. 5 years, Jessica said, looking at their wedding photos. It feels like a lifetime and at the same time like it was yesterday. It's because we've lived so much in these 5 years, Michael remarked. How many couples can say they've faced so many challenges and come out stronger? And how many can say they turned a moment of weakness into the foundation of a solid relationship? Jessica added. We're lucky, aren't we? Said Michael. It's not luck, it's work, it's choice, it's determination, Jessica corrected. We chose to fight for our love every day. True, and we'll keep choosing to, Michael promised. During the party, Mrs. Margaret asked to give a speech. My dears, I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this beautiful family you've built, she began, visibly moved. 5 years ago, I met a young couple facing their fears. Today, I look at you and see a mature, solid family that knows true love isn't the absence of problems, but the courage to face them together. The room fell silent, everyone absorbing her wise words. You're an inspiration to us all. You've proven it's possible to grow, change, and start over as many times as needed. And most importantly, you've shown that family is who chooses to stand together no matter the circumstances, Mrs. Margaret continued. Thank you, Mrs. Margaret, for guiding us through it all, Jessica said, emotional. I'm the one who's grateful you let me be part of your lives, Mrs. Margaret replied. Jennifer and Mark also gave a speech, thanking the couple for inspiring them to build their own strong relationship. You taught us love isn't a fantasy, it's reality. It's daily work, a conscious choice, forgiveness and understanding, Jennifer said. And you showed us it's worth fighting for what we believe in, Mark added. At the end of the party, when everyone had left and Emma Grace was asleep, Jessica and Michael sat in the same spot where they'd talked the night before their wedding 5 years earlier. Michael, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? Jessica asked. I would, Michael replied, surprising her. What? Jessica asked, curious. I'd have kissed you more on that first date when you were late, Michael teased, making her laugh. Just that, she pressed. Just that. Everything else, even you gossiping and almost missing our wedding, I'd keep exactly the same, Michael said, now serious. Why? Because that moment of crisis taught us who we really are, and who we can truly be when we're together, he explained. I wouldn't change anything either, Jessica agreed. Not even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, Michael corrected, because they're what made us grow. They stayed there, holding each other, looking at the house they'd turned into a home, thinking of their peacefully sleeping daughter, the family they'd chosen and built, and the life they'd created, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. Listen to me. What an incredible story, isn't it? Now tell me in the comments, do you believe the toughest moments can turn into life's greatest blessings? Share your experience below and don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories that touch your soul.